very much. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. That beach advertisement sure looked nice, didn't it? Aren't we all looking forward to the time when we can go back to a beach? Hopefully there is some light at the end of the tunnel right now. And speaking of the pandemic, it certainly has taught us all that we can't plan for everything. Things are going to happen in our lives. There are going to be major life events that we just can't control, that are out of our control. But these life events can also very strongly impact our financial situations as well. But there are ways to mitigate the risk. There are things that we can do, and I'm sure all of us have learned this through this time, that there are things that we can do to get our financial houses in order so that we are better prepared for the unexpected. So thank you so much, Stacy and Darin, for joining me. Stacy has many years experience with the Credit Counseling Society. They deal with people on an ongoing basis, people that have found themselves in debt and in financial trouble for various reasons. So I'm sure there's been some interesting experiences through the pandemic. And Darin is a financial literacy content award-winning executive from the financial services. And Darin's going to talk us through his situation and what's happened to him over the past year and how he's how he prepared for the unexpected. And Darin, I do believe you're the only man joining us today.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Yes.
We
Happy
appreciate
Women's
it.
Day.
Your story will resonate with everyone. So Stacy, I thought I'd start with you and maybe you can let us know a little bit about what Credit Counseling Society is experiencing right now. And then we can move into a discussion about how can people prepare for the unexpected.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terri, and good morning, everybody. So I'm Stacy, and I work at the Credit Counseling Society, and what we do is we help consumers with their money. As you can appreciate, money's never just about the dollars and cents, but it's really about, our experience with money. And so at CCS, what we've seen throughout the pandemic is people are afraid, and if you think about prior to the pandemic, how well did you know your money? How well were you in a relationship with your money? Was it an intimate relationship, or, is that one where you just wanted to keep, just pay your bills and keep it out, at the side? But what the pandemic did is it exacerbated our systems, right? It showed the cracks. And so if my personal finance system had cracks, a pandemic can easily do that. So what we've seen, Terry, is we've seen people who are afraid, of course, right? Job loss. And, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're right at the bottom. We're talking about health and money, which is safety and security. And so, it brought forward a lot of fear. And some of that fear is real, and some of that is the stories we create in our heads. Unfortunately, with the fear comes a lot of confusion. As we can appreciate for any of us in the financial industry, or even, when you go to your local bank and you have to sign paperwork, first of all, the print is so fine, you do need reading glasses for it, regardless of your age. And most people don't go through it, right? So there's a lot of confusion around the rules, around CERB, the EI benefits that got extended, as well as the income tax requirements. And so when you've got people who are afraid of health, afraid of, getting sick and possibly dying, they're afraid of their finances, and there's a lot of confusion, you can appreciate that a lot of Canadians actually did you know what, I'm going to back up and I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to let's see how everybody else handles it, and I'll wait.
Mhm.
So what we've noticed is
And
people have been waiting.
okay, good. So there has been a lot of people whose incomes have been impacted. Either they've lost their jobs or temporarily had their income reduced. There's also people that have had to stay home and care for their kids, so they
That's
couldn't work
correct.
at certain points during their pandemic, or look after their elderly parents as well. Like that's always been a
Absolutely.
big worry as well. So
Sure.
absolutely, everyone's been worried about their finances.
Hmm.
And even at the beginning of this pandemic, the markets crashed. So that was
Right.
another worry for
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
Now things have come back, but lots and lots of emotional worry. So
Absolutely.
that's why people should be doing certain things to help them mitigate that risk and to help them sort of put aside that emotionality, because if they do these certain things that we're going to talk about, then they should be okay or better than what might happen to them during an unplanned life event. So, Stacy, let's talk about first of all the really key important need for an emergency fund or a rainy day fund or whatever. I've heard Rob Carrot called it a swear word fund, but any kind of put money aside for emergencies. How important is that, Stacy?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. So if you think of little Hot Wheels cars, when we were kids, if you think of our back wheels, I had a boss that told me this analogy. The back wheels are really our thoughts and our emotions, right? And so if I'm just in my back wheels, I just spin. So if I'm in my fear, I just spin around in my fear. But the front wheels, if we put them down, are actions. And so exactly what you're talking about, Terry, is we need to put our front wheels down and take action, which includes creating an emergency fund. So as Elizabeth had talked about earlier, you really need to know your numbers. And not the numbers you think in your head, like what do I think I spend on groceries, but what do I actually spend? And I got to be honest, it's so boring. But if you track your expenses, it's way more fun to spend the money than it is to write it down. But at least you know where your money's going. Because then when you know where your money's going, if things go south real fast, you know where you can cut real fast as well. And then what you can do is in your head create, for me, what's the biggest possible emergency I could face that's like likely. I'm going to make up easy numbers, Terry, just because I'm not great at math. But let's say my biggest emergency is $1,000. Okay, let's keep it easy. Okay, so I know every other emergency that I could have could fit under that $1,000. So then my goal is to save 1,000. Now, if it's 10,000, the number doesn't matter, right? I just want to know what's going to give me the peace of mind to save some money. And then what I need to do is start putting money towards it. And that doesn't mean every month you put $1,000. If you can afford it, that's great. But you know what? That $5 latte that you decided not to have because maybe you're over caffeinated today, take that $5 and put it in your savings account. Or as Elizabeth had shown, she had saved over, I think it was well over $500. Great, take that savings and put it into your savings account. So there are lots of ways to top up the savings account so it doesn't have to bleed you dry. But what that does is it gets you out of the emotion and gets you into the action. And then it can get you back into the emotion with feeling more at peace, more in control, whatever words land for you, right? Because money's
Right.
not just about the money. Money is about how
Yeah.
you feel about it, and that's crucial.
Yeah, for sure. A good example, my daughter, just last fall, their furnace went out in their house and she had a brand new baby. So she was on mat leave, et cetera, et cetera. So they do have an emergency fund and it's her TFSA. So they will work towards putting that money back into the TFSA, but at least it's there. And she automatically puts $100 every month into that TFSA. So having a good pattern of doing that is
Mhm.
awesome. The other thing I think that we should mention before I start speaking with Darin about his situation um, is absolutely about getting debt under control, because that's
Absolutely.
the other issue. If you have really high debt and an emergency happens, then you're going to have to choose to pay off your debt, which can be very expensive, or put food on your table. So again, Stacy, maybe just a few words about how important it is to have your debt under control.
Oh, Terry, I mean, you're preaching to the choir, right? I mean, having the debt under control is crucial in the sense if you think of debt as an opportunity cost, every dollar I put towards my debt payment is a dollar I'm not putting into savings or into my trip to Mexico or wherever I want to go, right? And it's a shackle. And not only is it a shackle financially, it's a shackle on your health and mental health. So debt impacts mental and physical health. And so what we want to do is get a handle on it. And that a handle is not making minimum payments. A handle is having a plan to get it down and paid off. As a credit counselor, we always say like, boy, if I could have one wish, it would be that we would see consumers a year earlier. Because when someone has a bit of debt or even just a bit of stress, that's the time to deal with it. Because when they wait and when we stick our heads in the sand thinking it'll just get better, trust me, financially, things never get better if we just wait. In fact, the options
Right.
become fewer and fewer. So we always encourage people to
Yeah.
get help right away, especially from a
Okay,
nonprofit
good
credit
point.
counseling agency.
That's right. And there are nonprofit credit counseling agencies right across the country. So the first free consultation, go in there, they'll help you with your budget. They're a fantastic organization.
Absolutely.
So the pandemic, job loss, reduced income, et cetera. But there are other things that can happen that have nothing to do with the pandemic. Marriage breakup is very expensive. It can devastate people financially, and you don't plan for that. And it is unexpected. Job loss can happen at any time, not just because of the pandemic. And then, of course, there can be unfortunate health issues that come up that are totally unexpected. And Darin, here's where I'm going to introduce you, because you've had one heck of a year. So I'd like to ask you to sort of talk to the audience about what you've been through. And then what we're going to do is have a conversation around how financially this impacted you, and how you actually did some things right that protected you from certain issues. So Darin, if you want to tell us your story, that would be great. Thank you, Stacy.
Sure. I mean, to Stacy's point and everything you've talked about, my story is a bit of a lesson about some of the planning that you can do years and years in advance of something happening that you didn't plan, that you couldn't have predicted. In my case, at the end of 2019, I actually got laid off from my, I was working for a Canadian bank, major Canadian bank, was laid off. So I entered 2020 in a job search mode. And then the pandemic hit, which initially made things very difficult for job search. I was, provided a exit package, which carried my benefits forward several months. That proved to be fortuitous because like everybody else in last spring, staying at home, but exercising as much as I could. I was attending several online sessions with my trainer. After one of those, I'd actually didn't feel well. And my wife and I, we worried that I might have maybe have COVID, because everyone had COVID on their mind. Eventually called over the few days, the hospital or the health online to sort of, they took me through all the questions, and they actually said, well, the nurse on the line said, I actually think that you may have had a heart attack because you've described some things here that don't sound like COVID, but let's get you into the hospital. An ambulance came. I was fine at that moment, but they took me to the hospital. Long story short, yeah, I was diagnosed with that I'd had a mild heart attack, but then they did an angiogram, discovered that I needed, I had blockages. So I ended up going in for surgery and had a quintuple bypass. And through that whole process with the imaging that had been done of my chest and everything, it was discovered that I had lesions on my lungs, which was then diagnosed to be a form of lung cancer. I'm not a smoker, but this is a kind of lung cancer you get whether you're a smoker or not. And so suddenly a dual health crisis hit us. And initially, of course, your mind is focused on—
And you were unemployed as well.
And I was unemployed. And your mind focuses on the health stuff, but as sort of like okay, looks like I'm going to survive this, come out of the surgery, okay, and everything. I've got to deal with now cancer treatment and so on. This is when some of the decisions that had been made much earlier in my life turned out to be very fortuitous. So I can go on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Darin, so tell us about disability insurance and how it played a role like many years ago, and how it's helped you now.
Yeah, maybe before I speak about that, I mentioned how I was my benefits carried forward till the end of May, and so I actually had the heart attack in May of last year. The surgery ended up being on June 1st. I was in the hospital for 16 days because it was COVID. Could not have visitors, so that made it tough. But I had, because my benefits, one of the options of where I worked was that you got a base level of what's called critical illness, which is precisely a kind of insurance for if you were to have, a heart attack or a cancer diagnosis or other 4 or 5 other major sort of health incidents. Now, benefits package that we had carried a sort of a base level of it, but you could add, you could protect your spouse, you could, which I did, you can increase the amount by paying out a little bit through your paycheck to get a bit more of a payout. And so it's lesson number one is do an inventory of your benefits. You should really understand if you, and in our case, my wife is freelance, so I was the only one with benefits, which were about to run out, but they were still in place when all this happened. So, you know, make sure you understand your benefits and what options are there for you is lesson number one, because, you know, we were able to apply against the heart attack and, you know, within a matter of weeks got a payout of cash, which came in incredibly handy. Well, because my package had run out just around the time of this double whammy. So the other
Darin, I just want to mention two things about critical illness insurance. So number one, when you get it through your company benefit package, it's much cheaper than buying it personally.
Yeah.
So please look into that if you have that with your benefits. Secondly, it is a lump sum and you can use that money for anything. You can use it for medical treatment. You can use it to renovate your house. You can use it for going on a trip. So that's a couple key things about critical illness insurance.
Lump sum and tax-free. So that's another important thing. Now, the disability insurance is an interesting story because I'd actually had a friend who 15 or 20 years ago had developed a very aggressive form of melanoma, and he and his wife had made a decision just previous to that, which was fortuitous for them, in that they decided that, hey, listen, we're both have worked full-time, but we've also had stages where we've been self-employed or unemployed. And, you know, the one thing about your benefits at work is if you're not working, you don't have them. And in my case, as I mentioned, my wife is full-time self-employed, and I'd had points in my career when, yeah, there was like times when I wasn't working full-time or I got laid off or whatever. And so it occurred to us, you know, like almost a couple decades ago, that maybe we need some protection beyond the benefits that you get when you're working full-time. And so through our financial advisor and talking to this other friend of mine who'd gone through the experience, we made the decision to get disability insurance privately because in your benefits, normally you have both short-term and long-term disability if you're working full-time. Again, make sure you understand that and talk to your HR department if you don't. But if, you know, if we imagine scenarios where we could both not be working full time at some point, so we should have this other protection. And, you know, it's not, you know, it's like, in a way, it's like you're paying into an emergency fund as well. So you do need a cash savings and investment funds for emergencies. But then risk mitigation is another way that you prepare for an emergency. And then you have to wait, in my case, I think 90 days post the health incident to apply, and then was accepted right away because of the circumstance. And they immediately reimburse you for any of the premiums that you've paid up to the time that you had the health incident, and then begin a monthly tax-free payment that's depending on what it is. So again, something that we had as part of our financial plan, got it, you know, 15 or 20 years prior to when the health incident happened. But did we ever thank our younger selves for having made that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. That's good news for you. So just like Steve said, having a very detailed, good picture of your financial situation is so important. You know, with respect to knowing your income, knowing your expenses, knowing your benefits. So, you know, there are a lot of people now who are not working full-time for companies. It's the gig economy, where people are holding different types of jobs or contract jobs. So if you don't have benefits, it is very important to look at all these different things that benefit packages do get you. So we would highly recommend that as well. So before we wrap up here, Stacy, was there anything else? Darin, I know we had a chat the other day. We want to, provide our audience with any more tips on, how to prepare for that unexpected thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a big believer in attaching it to a feeling. What does it feel like when I'm in a crisis? Pardon me. And then what do I want to feel like instead? So for me, I like to feel in control of my money and I want to feel at peace. So that's what I'm striving for. When I put every dollar into my savings account, that gets me feeling more at peace and more in control, knowing I've got the wherewithal to, to be resilient, to weather the storm that comes up
Mhm.
because I'm actually taking control, right? My front wheels have gone down and I'm taking action. So that's important.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and
And I
picking
know,
up.
Darin, you talked about, how your younger self did you a favor for your older self. And I think that's something people need to consider as well.
Well, I think so, but picking up on what Stacy said about feelings, because believe me, there are times over the last number of years where, when we're putting kids through university and everything like that, or there's a reno we want to do and this and that, and you're looking at what you're, paying out for insurance premiums, et cetera, and you go, wow, do we really? And the thing is, um, sometimes people make this odd calculation where they say, I could be paying these premiums for most of our working lives and then not actually need my disability insurance, as if that's a bad thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. The point is, what would be more annoying or for you, or make you feel worse, to use Stacy's terminology? Like, would it be that you went through your entire career having paid for disability insurance that you never needed? Or would it be that you did need it and never paid for it and found yourself in a situation where you were missing income and couldn't work? And so, again, it's just about risk mitigation and savings and investing. It's a combination of these things. And when you start them in your plan is really depends on where you are in your career and your life. But I couldn't take all the credit myself because I had some friends that counseled and an advisor, but we patted ourselves on the back for making that decision.
That's fantastic. And Darin, I understand your treatment is going well, so we certainly wish you the best going forward. And hopefully
Thank you very
everything
much.
will work out for the best for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Stacy, thank you very much for joining us. Credit counseling, not-for-profit credit counseling, not-for-profit. Not-for-profit credit counseling is the place to go if you need some help with budgeting and debt management, etc. So I'd like to thank both Stacy and Darin. Some great lessons learned here through work experience and through life experience. Insurance, three things: emergency fund, have some cash available, even if it's $500,000 for something that breaks down, your car breakdown. Get your debt under control. Really try to pay off, especially credit card debt. It's just so expensive. Liz gave some really good examples in her presentation just before us about how expensive it can be. And thirdly, insurance is very important. It is there to help protect the unexpected. And yes, you may feel like it costs a lot, but it's insurance. It's there just in case. I've used car insurance. We had 2 car accidents within 10 days once, and I calculated back in the day that we had actually received back every single penny we had paid in car insurance. So you don't want to use insurance, but it is there. And especially if you get it through a company benefits plan, it can be very economical. So thank you very much, Darin and Stacy. Really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
I know we all look forward to the rest of today. And happy International Women's Day.
Happy Women's Day.
Thank you, Terry. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. Thank you.